Hey, what's going on, everybody? So I was looking at the zombie survival guide. Um, what's his name? His last name's Brooks. I can't remember, but there was an excerpt in his book that was talking about like a really good zombie melee weapon, and it got me thinking a lot of different things about melee weapons and how they would be effective in the long run. Like guns eventually won't be as effective because they require ammunition. And what I mean is, this is an example of a brand new 9mm round. If you can see that, it's nice and shiny, looks, you can tell it's new, it's nice and new. Then this one was just sitting in a drawer for a couple years, not closed in the gun safe or anything like that. And you can see it's not a huge difference, but you can still see a difference that, just having this round exposed for a couple years, you can clearly see that it's kind of dulled down and whatnot. And so it begs the question, how long is ammo going to last after the apocalyptic situation happens, whether it be zombies or a meteor striking or nuclear fallout or whatever? Your ammo is going to be limited because manufacturers most likely are not going to be making the ammo after the event happens. And so you have to really consider and think about what are good melee options, because eventually you're not going to have ammo anymore. And that may be like, there's some people out there that have the machines and the spare cartridges and bullet tips and gunpowder to make their own ammo. And so let's say that, you have a system that is designed so that not only you, but other survivors that are with you could have a steady ammo supply for 100 years. You still have to eventually get to a point where somehow you can set up some kind of system to replace the materials that you're going to need to make ammunition. And how hard and complicated that's going to be suggests that most likely you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to have molds and machines and all different kinds of things to actually make the casings and make sure that the casings work right, and make the bullet tips, and have the means to make the materials that you need to make gunpowder, and then have the machines to put all the pieces together and stuff like that. It's so incredibly rare that you would have all of that ready to go. And I'm sure some people out there do, but they have it on like a smaller scale. It's not like you can use that one small machine in your basement to make enough rounds for an army for the forever. It's not realistic to think of it that way. And when I think of apocalyptic events, I think of it as realistic as possible. And so one of the things on here is the DP12 double-barreled pump shotgun. Now that is awesome. It holds many rounds. It's really cool. I agree that this would be a post-apocalyptic weapon that would be very nice to have. But 100 years from now, is it still going to be even a viable option? Most likely not. You might as well just accept that there's a good chance that you won't have ammo for this 100 years from now. And so prepare now to get the experience with using a melee weapon. And so most of these on this list are melee weapons. I particularly like the air-powered arrow rifle. That's really cool. But that'll eventually break down and not be usable. You'll have to find parts to replace this weapon eventually and stuff like that. But that's the way it is with everything. So there would have to be some kind of system put in place, whether it be for ammo and guns or melee weapons. Eventually, your melee weapons will break down and they will be unusable. Everything degrades, everything breaks down over time. So you want to have some type of situation set up, whether you can continue to make ammo or you can continue to make melee weapons. But it's more realistic to accept the possibility that you can't make ammo, and that it's a lot easier to make weapons that are melee weapons over guns and ammo. It's like the new game Dying Light 2 came out, and they don't have any guns. Like, I guess they have a melee. They mainly concentrate on melee weapons, but they have a crossbow, I guess you can eventually get, but you don't have any guns. And the concept, I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm not going to say, what's going on with it or whatever, but the concept of them not having any guns or ammo would eventually be realistic, because there'd just be no ability to reliably manufacture the guns and ammo. Maybe in some occasions there would eventually get to a point where you could power up an electric plant again, and you could do all these things so that you can go back to when you could manufacture guns and ammo and stuff like that. But it's just incredibly unrealistic to think that at any point in time throughout the entire event that's going on, that gun is going to continue to be reliable, because the ammo is going to continue to be reliable. And this may not even be a situation that we'd have to worry about, because like I said earlier, to be realistic, zombies wouldn't last that long. They wouldn't be able to, there's no realistic situation that would indicate that there'd be some kind of super virus that would bring a zombie back, and that zombie be able to last longer than a month. There's just nothing in this world that would imply that anything would work that way. So I feel like it would be something more like the Rage virus, but it would operate like you've seen in other zombie movies, where it takes like a day or two to take over. The World War Z virus and the Rage virus, how it takes over a person so quickly, that's just not realistic. I don't see it being like that. But getting a virus and it taking you over after a couple days, you dying and coming back, I guess that's possible, but very unlikely. Whereas something like the Rage virus, or something like maybe the rabies virus was mutated or something like that, and so it just causes people to go nuts. They're not actually like zombies, but they're just crazy. That's more realistic. But what's also more realistic is, how do those people stay alive after 3 or 4 days? And so we may not even have to worry about like ammo degrading and stuff like that. But if you're looking at like a real apocalyptic event that doesn't involve zombies or people going crazy or anything like that, and everything got shut down because of this event, because most people have been wiped out at this point. Because in most, or if not all, apocalyptic scenarios, most people are gone. There's only like a few survivors here and there. So chances are you're not going to be working with a large group of people trying to turn all this electric power back on and trying to do all these things so that you can start making ammo again. I mean, it's just very far-fetched to believe that would actually happen. So you want to look at melee weapons to rely on, because those are the things that are going to last more. You're going to be able to repair them and replace them a lot easier. It's a lot easier to make them, because literally you could, if you mess around with it and you get some experience, you could make a bonfire and make it hot enough to where you can bend metal. You can form melee weapons. And so I was looking at this and I was like, that doesn't seem like the best viable option, but it might be. Like, you could gouge enemies and whatnot, but you're kind of making this to where it's like really, really super hard to use that hand. And then the air-powered arrow rifle, you'd have to consider that this would be a really good viable weapon. It would. But I mean, out of a regular bow and a crossbow, this thing would be very, very easy to reload. Most likely, if it's air-powered, you probably have some system on this gun, I'm assuming, that you just can easily put the arrow back, like, down in there, and you could you could take the arrows back after a kill, whereas with bullets, you can't take the bullet back. So this is very, very good example of a post-apocalyptic gun that would be really nice to have. And if he has a scope on this, chances are it can fire really, really far, and it's air powered. So I think maybe that means that it works off of CO2 or something like that. I'm not sure. I'd have to do more research on it. But if it does work off of CO2, then you'd have to have CO2 to fire it, which that would be a problem because over time, good luck finding CO2. And if you do find CO2, is it still good after a couple years of just sitting on a empty store shelf or whatever? So you have to consider that. There's positives and there's negatives with everything. And so anyway, the concept, the whole point that I'm trying to make is there are weapons in here that are like this. This might be a very viable option, a way to hit a zombie and or somebody attacking you and get them away from you. But this is going to require you to be really close up and personal. Whereas like a spear, you could probably, especially like zombies or things that don't think rationally, that you could maybe use the spear to try and keep a distance away from them. If you're good at like knowing when to back up and sidestep and stuff like that, spear might be pretty good for that. But it's kind of a one enemy at a time weapon at the same time because it's a poking weapon. So you're going to probably be aiming for the eye socket because it's the most vulnerable place to get to the brain if we're talking about a zombie. But with regular people, you're only going to effectively be able to like swing that side to side to try and keep them away. But to cause like a killing blow or whatever, you're giving up like a second of time that exposes you because you have to drive that into that person and then bring that back. And so it's one person at a time weapon, and they'll be able to overcome you. Same with zombies to an extent. Like they'll be able, if there's more than a couple, they're going to be able to overwhelm you if you back yourself into a corner and you don't have the experience required to properly maneuver that. And then they have other things, tactical crossbow, but eventually those strings will degrade, and tomahawk. I mean, but all of this stuff, eventually it'll wear out eventually, and you'll have to replace it in some way, shape, or form. But that's why melee weapons would kind of be better over guns. And this is ridiculous. I don't even understand the concept of that. How could you properly use that on somebody? Either the barrel or the magazine or something is kind of getting in the way. I don't know what that is supposed to even. Don't do that. That doesn't look like it would be good for anything. When you're coming down, you're going to smack your magazine, and you're not going to want to jolt a weapon with a magazine that hard to use that, and you can't poke forward with it because the barrel is longer than the blade. This makes absolutely no sense at all. But the rest of this stuff, especially this survival hatchet, this is close to what I thought would be a good concept as a weapon to use. Which brings me to this point. This is something I drew this morning that I thought that maybe this would be a perfect weapon. So you have a blade at the end, and this is going to be for when a zombie or something is down on the ground and you poke down on them with this piece right here. You can find scraps of metal and different things, and you might even be able to find brass knuckles that you can cut in half and then weld two pieces and then just drill some holes in a double-bladed axe handle, or just go and pick up a double-bladed wood axe from Walmart, or a lot of different places would have either handle replacements or a double-bladed axe itself, and it'd be really super easy to just make this and attach a blade to it for the bottom, and then the double-bladed axe metal part itself, the blade itself, I would cut and flatten this side so that it's more like a hammer type of thing, and then I would have this side pointed, so you're getting the bladed edge coming in like this, but then it's pointed on the other side too. I would use a grinder or something to cut this metal into a point here and then flatten it here. So then you have a really good swing, and it's two-handed, and You could even swing it with one hand if you needed a hands-free, because of that grip and the knuckles part of it. You would be able to swing it without worrying about it flying out of your hand because you have that extra support there. And so obviously it would be more effective to use it with two hands, but you could swing it down like through like this, or you can hit like this, or in like if somebody's down on the ground, you poke them down like that. And you can also flip it like this and poke the zombies. So instead of it just being like a spear where you only have the ability to just do one at a time, you have a crowd control weapon that you can swing around and knock enemies around. And one side's flattened, one side's pointed, but the point doesn't have anything that has any retraction in it at all. So chances are this weapon, whether you use the flattened end, the pointed end, or the pointed end down at the handle, the bottom of the handle, those things are not going to get stuck in the enemy or the zombie or anything like that. So I just felt like this would be probably as close to a perfect melee weapon as you could get, because it would be really super easy to find. You could literally find a double-bladed wood axe or a single-bladed wood axe or any axe anywhere, and you could cut it down to be more precise for a good situation, for whether it be a single-person use or crowd control or anything like that. This could be used in many different scenarios. And then you have this here that's protecting your hand so that you can one-hand swing if you need to. You can two-hand swing, you know, whatever. I just feel like this is overall like a really good, well-rounded weapon that would be really, really useful in an apocalyptic situation. And you wouldn't have to worry about this running out of ammo. And if it eventually degraded and broke down, it really wouldn't be that big of a deal to replace it. You literally just drill, like let's say that the bladed axe part broke, this part broke, and you needed to replace that. Just go get another double-bladed axe, cut it down, and then you screwed this into it. Just unscrew it, put a couple screw holes into the new one, and reattach this to the new one. Or if this handle part breaks, you know, it's just a couple pieces of metal, something that could be either brass knuckles or something that, I mean, it's not really all that difficult to bend stuff to make it into something that can be fashioned to the bottom handle of this. So if any of this broke, it's pretty easy to replace it. Whereas, like, if you go to a store because you need 9mm ammo, there isn't anymore. So then you have to go to the next store and the next store and the next store. Chances are people aren't going to be going to stores to be getting a double-sided wood axe. They're going to be going to the stores to loot the ammo and the food. So chances are, whatever store you go to, you're going to be able to find something like this, which is why it's another reason as to why I feel like it'd be as close to a perfect melee weapon in an apocalyptic event that you can get. And it would probably take you, what, an hour of your time to attach a blade, weld a blade, or whatever. And if you couldn't weld it and you couldn't cut it, you didn't have the means to, you could, chances are you will eventually run into an occasion in which you might be comfortable enough to be able to explore and find things that you could use. But yeah, it's like the negative is still there with this weapon, but the negative is there with all weapons, anything. It doesn't really matter. And if you don't have the skill set and you don't have the means to use it effectively, then it's not really going to matter in the end. But yeah, it was just my little personal opinion. I felt like this would probably be as close to perfect as I could get. And let me know what your guys' opinions are. Like, comment, share, subscribe. I'd love to hear from you guys. If you think that there's a weapon out there that might be more effective and better, or easier to find, or easier to make, I would be really interested to hear about that. And yeah, so I'll see you on the next one. All right, later.